All right, Broncos country, we are live. Thank you so much to everyone who has tuned in. We've got Kenny in the house, Robert, DS, and Garrett so far for this Denver Broncos Syndicate pregame tailgate of our season finale versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Although the Denver Broncos have been eliminated from playoff contention, there is still quite a bit to play for today as the Broncos can clinch their first winning record since 2016 with a 9-8 record. They also have a potential chance to end their 7-game losing streak to the Raiders. They have never beaten the Las Vegas Raiders at all. So hopefully this has been a season that's been all about breaking streaks. Hopefully they can break one more today. However, there is certainly an argument out there for the Denver Broncos to lose this game, as if they were to lose this game, they would get better draft position. Currently, they sit at the number 14 overall pick. That was entering today's slate of games. By the end of today, we will obviously know the Denver Broncos' final draft position. So I'm curious to see where you guys are at, Broncos country. Do you guys want the Denver Broncos to win this game? Do you guys want them to go out there and put out a statement performance against the Raiders in their final act of the year? Or do you want them to potentially lose this game? Would you not be upset if they lost this game? And are you looking forward to the future with the draft and the potential talk of a first-round quarterback? Drop those comments down in the chat, guys. I would love to hear your thoughts. Before we get into it, guys, as I sip some Pepsi here, I just wanted to take a quick little peek over here at the inactive list for the Broncos for the game. We've got Art Green, the rookie undrafted corner out of Houston. Thomas Incoom, rookie edge rusher. Alex Forsyth, rookie safety. Incoom's gotten some playing time this year, but the other two guys have been on the inactive list all year. Same goes for Elijah Garcia. Chris Manhertz, he is going to be down for this one, as well as Michael Bandy. So for those who are looking for J.L. Skinner to make his NFL debut, it could be coming today. Obviously, with some other injuries that we're dealing with back there, that could definitely make some sense for sure. Maverick says, if we win, then finish above 500. If we lose, then we get a better draft pick. No matter what happens, we win. Absolutely. That's really the same exact way that I see it, quite frankly. We got Garrett saying, I want them to try to win, but also get a good draft pick. I feel like the Broncos are going to trade up no matter what. I've got pretty reliable information on that. And the Broncos are dead set on getting their franchise quarterback this year. They're going to do whatever it takes. If they lose this game, it'll give them some better ammo to trade up, but whatever they have to do, even if they win this game, they're going to get their guy, Broncos country. No more of this quarterback purgatory crap. The Broncos are dead set on getting their franchise guy. Ownership wants it done. Sean Payton wants it done. And reports have come out, not so much of a surprise, that George Payton is certainly on the hot seat, and it will ultimately be Sean Payton who decides if he will be here next year. Sean Payton is essentially going to want a GM that he's going to work with long term. Will that be George Payton? That remains to be seen. But Sean Payton only had one GM during his entire tenure in New Orleans, obviously with Mickey Loomis, who's been their GM I believe since like 2002 or something like that, well before Sean Payton got there. So Sean Payton's going to want one guy that he's going to consistently be tied at the hip with, and George Payton may not be that guy. We'll definitely see what happens there. Any win against the Raiders is always a good win, Joaquin says. Human Person says, I bet the over on 8.5 wins, so I'm rooting for a win. Okay, that's fair enough. That is totally fair. I really don't know which quarterback I want in the draft, to be honest. For me, I'm smitten over Jaden Daniels. I haven't evaluated everybody yet. The only ones that I've really evaluated are Jaden Daniels and then one game of Michael Penix that wasn't the Texas game. I need to evaluate that Texas game of Michael Penix. But I really, really love the upside and the athleticism that Jaden Daniels brings. He's getting better and better at processing at the line of scrimmage. And Sean Payton, although he prefers a quarterback that thrives in structure rather than chaos, I feel like Jaden Daniels can actually do both. And Jaden Daniels' athleticism is putting Russell Wilson to shame, quite frankly. Jaden Daniels has Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields level athleticism that can really get him out of trouble a lot of times, as opposed to Russell Wilson, who uses his mobility and athleticism to get himself in trouble, if that makes any sense. So I think that Sean Payton would be a lot more patient with a guy like Jaden Daniels. Whether he'll be on the board or not, I don't know. If we come over here and take a look at the draft order entering this game, obviously, the Carolina Panthers gave the Chicago Bears the number 1 overall pick. That was a move that their ownership is probably sorely regretting to this day. Washington Commanders and New England Patriots for number 2 is going to be interesting. If the New England Patriots lose today to the New York Jets, I'm not sure exactly what the score is there, then they could potentially slip into that number 2 slot, especially if Washington were to get the upset win over Dallas, like I very much think they're going to. Arizona at 4 is not going to take a quarterback. And then the Broncos, I feel like, are really going to have to maybe trade up if they were to get somebody like Jaden Daniels. It's going to be interesting to see what the Chicago Bears do. Do they keep Justin Fields? Do they trade down, try to acquire more picks and keep Justin Fields? You know, do they go with Caleb Williams? It's so interesting what they're going to do. Washington and New England feel like two teams that are dead set on getting quarterbacks. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see if Jaden Daniels will be on the board by the time we get to number 4, which is probably the first realistic spot that the Denver Broncos could trade into, considering they don't have a second-round pick. I know the Broncos don't want to move on from Pat Surtain, but that might be the only way that they could get up to like the number 1, number 2 overall pick. I just don't see that happening. As long as it's not J.J. McCarthy, Maverick says. I think J.J. McCarthy is kind of dead set going to the Las Vegas Raiders. I know the Raiders are pretty strong on hiring Jim Harbaugh and pairing him with J.J. McCarthy, so that is something I would keep an eye on there. Do you think if Stidham has a good game, he could start next season? I do think he could maybe enter training camp next year as the starter, but there has to be a rookie quarterback, a first-round rookie quarterback behind him, and odds are good that that rookie quarterback would beat him out in training camp. So sure, Jarrett Stidham could enter the initial part of the offseason as the guy, but I strongly feel like the guy behind him would probably beat him out for the job week 1. There's some benefit to sitting rookie quarterbacks if they're coming into a really crappy situation like the Carolina Panthers, or if you have a Hall of Fame quarterback ahead of them, or just a really stable situation quarterback-wise ahead of them, like what the Packers have done with Brett Favre or with Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love, and now with what the Kansas City Chiefs had done previously with Alex Smith and Patrick Mahomes as a more modern example. I don't necessarily feel like Jarrett Stidham is quite at the level of even an Alex Smith. He's obviously not at the level of an Aaron Rodgers or a Brett Favre. So, I don't know, man. I think that he could enter the initial part of the offseason as the guy, but it could very much be like how it was with Anthony Richardson and the Colts, where Gardner Minshew was the starter entering training camp, but it was very clear that Richardson was the guy entering week 1, and that's who the Indianapolis Colts ended up rolling with in week 1. Obviously, he got injured. It was good that the Colts had Gardner Minshew behind Anthony Richardson that season for this season. So maybe the Broncos could take a similar approach to that, where they have Jarrett Stidham as sort of that backup mentor and insurance policy in case the rookie gets hurt or is just not ready to start right away. But I see all the benefit of starting your young rookie quarterback right away. Get him those live bullets and get him the experience that he needs right off the bat. The Broncos have a decent enough offensive line and hopefully a decent enough receiving core next year. We'll see what happens. I don't anticipate Tim Patrick returning for salary cap reasons unless he's willing to take a pretty significant pay cut, which he might do. I don't foresee Jerry Jeudy being here next year, to be honest. I think the Broncos are going to try to see what they can get from him on the trade market, try to recoup some draft picks with Jerry Jeudy. He's just not a great fit in this scheme, it feels like. Cortland Sutton will definitely be here next year, but outside of that, our young rookie quarterback could be working with a little bit of a revamped receiving core, so maybe the Broncos don't want to throw him into that sort of situation right away, and maybe that's when you go with somebody like Jarrett Stidham. I'd just like to see some exciting football for once. Hopefully, we see a nice Cortland Sutton grab or a Jaleel explosive runaway gain. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the Broncos are going to come out today with their hair on fire. The players and the coaches are going to want to win this game, but the Raiders also have quite a bit to play for in this one, even though they no longer are in playoff contention. I know that locker room loves Antonio Pierce and really wants to make a case for him to be the full-time head coach heading into next year. The Raiders are still going to have to hold a formal coaching search, but I know that locker room is really going to want to make a statement to Mark Davis that, hey, listen, you cannot make the same mistake that you did last time with Rich Bisaccia. You've got to keep the guy who's doing a good job. So I could very well see the Raiders going out there and also playing with their hair on fire. So I think this could be a fun game with a lot of points scored. It's Jarrett Stidham's return to Las Vegas, sort of a revenge game for him because the Raiders had an opportunity to bring Jarrett Stidham back as sort of a bridge starter last year, this season, but they didn't do that. They ended up signing Jimmy Garoppolo instead, a move that they probably sorely regret. So this is an opportunity for Jarrett Stidham to go in there and really make Mark Davis eat his words even more. We need a JJ McCarthy. Like you were saying, I think it'd be better that way. Already know Jim Harbaugh's not going to go to the Raiders. Maverick says we need a legit wide receiver one. I definitely agree. I think the Broncos at this point do not have a true alpha number one receiver. I mean, Cortland Sutton is sort of a quasi number one, if that makes any sense, but I don't think that he's a true alpha number one guy. I think that the Broncos are going to have to find that guy long term. I don't think that they'll be able to get him in the draft this year, obviously, because quarterback is going to be their number one target in the draft. But if there's a free agent wide receiver or somebody they could potentially trade for, then that's certainly an option. I mean, probably the best wide receiver that's going to be available via a trade this year is going to be Devontae Adams, ironically enough. But he's pretty dead set on going to the New York Jets next year. I know the Jets are really smitten on wanting to get him and reunite him with Aaron Rodgers. So that's where I think things stand right now. Robert says that we need a wide receiver more than a quarterback. I feel like at this point in time, the Broncos can't afford to tilly-tally around with quarterbacks anymore. They've done that ever since we've moved on from Peyton Manning. They haven't gone out and truly tried to get their guy outside of Paxton Lynch, which we all know was a massive failure. Ever since then, the Broncos have tried these duct tape quarterbacks, obviously with Paxton or with Trevor Siemian, Brock Osweiler, Case Keenum, Joe Flacco. They did draft Drew Lock in the second round, but how much of an investment are you really making in a second round quarterback? And that ultimately ended up reading true. Teddy Bridgewater obviously wasn't the guy. They thought that they were getting that guy, making the big splash move to get Russell Wilson. That didn't work. I know that fans will make the argument that the Broncos have never developed a quarterback that they've drafted, but they didn't draft John Elway. They went out and traded for him, but for all intents and purposes, it was the same process as a draft, even though they didn't go out and directly select him. They pinpointed that they wanted John Elway. They had the opportunity to get him, and they got him as a rookie. So I consider that as a development, even though it wasn't necessarily a draft and development. As far as Sean Payton is concerned, I know there's the argument there that he's never developed a young quarterback. Look no further than Tony Romo, who Sean Payton played a critical part in developing during his early years in Dallas. Although he wasn't drafted, he was an undrafted free agent. Sean Payton does have a good track record of developing quarterbacks, and the Broncos actually have a pretty decent track record of developing quarterbacks historically, although the last couple of times it hasn't been all that great. But you got to remember, it's a completely different Broncos regime. There's completely different people in the building. It's a different ownership group. It's different all across the board. You can't really judge previous organizational tendencies from different people on what these current people are going to do. That's just not sound logical thinking. I honestly think it's like 70% luck drafting a quarterback. Drafting a franchise quarterback is hard, and people act like they're a dime a dozen. It's very true. I also feel like it's very important for a situation that the quarterback's going into. Look no further than the number 1 and number 2 overall pick in this past year's draft in Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. Bryce Young went to Carolina, which was an unstable situation. They didn't have a number 1 wide receiver. They have a terrible offensive line, no run game, bad coaching. Their defense is decent, but outside of that, Bryce Young entered a horrible situation for a rookie quarterback. Compare that to CJ Stroud, where they have a really strong rookie head coach in D'Amico Ryans, paired with a really young up-and-coming offensive coordinator in Bobby Slowick, coming off of that Shanahan tree. They have weapons, Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz, Devin Singletary, Nico Collins, who's an absolute monster. They had a decent offensive line for CJ Stroud to walk into. Stroud walked into a much better situation, and he's thriving. Anthony Richardson walked into a really strong situation, and he thrived for the first 4 games that he got to play before he got injured. You look at those situations as compared to a situation like Bryce Young's in Carolina, that's why he was set up to fail, in my opinion. So the Broncos actually will have a comparatively decent situation for a rookie quarterback to walk into, with a really highly graded offensive line per PFF. A lot of the sacks that were given up by that offensive line, I know a lot of those conversations in the past, but 70% of those sacks were on Russell Wilson. The Broncos have a decent situation for a young quarterback to walk into, and so I feel like that is part of the luck element that plays into it as well, is just what situation the quarterback is lucky or unlucky to get drafted into, if that makes any sense. But imagine putting all our cards into a quarterback who may be in a bust, and then we're the same team as the last 2 years. We could have dressed a position, but a rookie quarterback could really save us. Yes, that's true, but at the end of the day, man, if you don't swing, you won't hit. The Broncos cannot afford to tilly-tally around with this quarterback market anymore. They can't afford band-aid quarterbacks, otherwise they're going to be in quarterback purgatory. I mean, yeah, you're risking going into hell, but I'd much rather take the risk and it not work than not take the risk at all. The Broncos went way too long without taking that risk, especially when you look at 2018 when they had the opportunity to draft Josh Allen. They drafted Bradley Chubb with that same kind of logic, and look where it ended up for them. The Broncos cannot afford to be gun shy, man. That's one thing they cannot afford to do, is be gun shy. They were gun shy in 2018 because Paxton Lynch didn't work out for them, and that was a mistake that is still haunting the team to this day. Jordan Love would have been trash starting out the gate, and now he's doing well. Stroud is doing great out the gate. No, who knows how he's going to end up? Everybody acts like they have the answers, but it's a lot of different ways for a quarterback to do well. Not Russell Wilson, or not to do well, or rookie or not. Russell Wilson is proof of that. Bryce Young is proof of that. CJ Stroud is proof. I mean, there are a lot of different ways philosophically to approach it. I just feel like at this point, the Broncos have approached every single way except this one, and it hasn't worked out for them. The Broncos have to go down this route, in my opinion. Have you guys seen the state of the turf in Las Vegas? It looks like a trampled mess. Yeah, it looked terrible. It really did, and it's embarrassing. The Vegas ownership has the second most expensive stadium in the NFL, yet they don't want to invest the necessary resources to give their players a safe playing surface. It's absolutely embarrassing. You look at the Broncos ownership, who has invested in a new field twice now since they've been owners of the Broncos. They clearly care about player safety. The Raiders do not, and that's a very, very deep testament to the stark contrast in organizational philosophies between the Broncos and the Raiders. Yeah, really, really bad. We got Holy Diver in the house saying, hey boys, 9-8 looks awfully nice going into the offseason. I definitely agree, man. The Broncos are in a situation where they really can't lose. If they win the game, they're 9-8. They have their first winning record since 2016. If they lose, they get a higher draft pick and a better chance to land their franchise quarterback. Really, I don't see the Broncos losing in either scenario, man. Whether you're thinking short term or whether you're thinking long term, I think that a win would give the guys in the locker room a big spark and a big momentum shift heading into next year, much like the win for the Detroit Lions did going into Lambeau last year and upsetting the Green Bay Packers. I think that this could be a very similar kind of win for the Denver Broncos, giving them that momentum that they need heading into next year. But again, if we lose it and we have the chance to draft our franchise quarterback, or a better chance to draft our franchise quarterback, I don't see that being a bad scenario for the Broncos either. Only way we lose is players getting hurt. 100%, man. And if we've got this game pretty well in hand, then I hope the Broncos pull guys and let some of the backups, let some of the young guys get some work, let JL Skinner get some work, let some of those other guys get some work. I think this is a perfect opportunity for the Broncos to do that. That's why they're allowing some of these young guys to be active for this game. There's no use in a long-term injury to Cortland Sutton or one of your offensive linemen. Unfortunately, the Broncos did lose their bit of continuity that they had on the offensive line this year, as for the final game of the year, Cam Fleming will be starting at right tackle in place of Mike McGlinchey. I think Cam Fleming's actually done a really, really good job whenever he's had to play in place of McGlinchey, so I don't think that there's going to be much of a drop-off there. I actually low-key think it might be a bit of an addition by subtraction, but still, man, that's one thing that does suck, is the Broncos did lose that little bit of continuity there on their offensive line. So, at the end of the day, Broncos country, I think that the only way that the Denver Broncos could lose, just like Robert said, is if they get players hurt. I think this is going to be a game where we could see a lot of explosive plays. Sean Payton may not be afraid to cut it loose in the final game. Jarrett Stidham probably isn't going to be afraid to cut it loose against his old team. Of course, we're going to have to account for Max Crosby on the Raiders. Josh Jacobs, who's given us a lot of fits in previous games going against the Raiders, is not going to play, but their rookie running back Zamir White out of Georgia has done some nice things for them, so I'd definitely keep an eye on him. Or obviously going to have to keep an eye on Devontae Adams. Defensively, I think that Vance Joseph's going to have a game plan to blitz Aiden O'Connell, make him uncomfortable, and try to force some turnovers, man. Kind of like the way the Broncos approach things during their 5-game winning streak. They've got nothing to lose, so why not go out there with your ears pinned back and come out firing, man? Let's have some fun. Why not? Mark asks, is our third quarterback active? He is not active. He is not active. He is going to be re-signed to the team on Monday on a futures deal, but it's going to be the same quarterback plan as previous. Jarrett Stidham as the starter and Russell Wilson as the backup. So if Jarrett Stidham does get hurt, then Russell Wilson will be right back in there, guys. All right, looks like the Detroit Lions are beating the Minnesota Vikings 30-20. Tampa Bay, let's go. Tampa Bay got the win over Carolina. My buddy is a diehard Buccaneers fan, so I've been pulling for Tampa Bay there. They got officially a playoff berth after clinching the NFC South. Let's go there, man. We allowed the young guys to play last season in the final game. Cough, cough, Jaquan McMillan. Absolutely, man. That's when Jaquan really got to establish himself on the map for the Denver Broncos, and he took that momentum from a really nice game against the Chargers in the final week last year, and he took that into training camp and allowed it to thrive into becoming a full-time starter and potentially budding star for the Denver Broncos. We could see another player like that today. The safety, Devin Key, rookie, is also going to be active for this one, so that's another situation. Mark says, so Russ might play only if Jarrett Stidham gets hurt. That's the only scenario where Russell Wilson will play. I mean, if they pull starters, I don't see Jarrett being one of those guys pulled. I think he'll play the entire game, but Russell Wilson, the only way that he'll end up seeing the field is if Jarrett Stidham gets hurt. All right, guys, I'm curious about your overall thoughts and score predictions for this game. We are going to wrap this up. I've got some things I got to set up before the game stream tonight. Let me go ahead and get the link for the game stream. Just give me 1 second, guys. Bear with me. Hopefully you guys can join in for the live stream. Those are always a good time. We have live play-by-play, game audio, analysis, film study. They are always a whole lot of fun. The chat is so active during the game streams. I really enjoy doing them. And of course, this is the last one of the season, so hopefully we can make it the best one of the year. All right, Broncos country, there is the link to the game stream. Give me your overall thoughts and score predictions for this game in the comments section down below. I think that the Broncos will win this game. They're going to come out with their hair on fire. I think they're going to win by 2 scores, so I've got the Broncos winning 27-17. Robert says maybe 16-24 Broncos, so kind of the same line of thinking that I have right there. I think that the Denver Broncos are going to want to end this season the right way, end it with a winning record, and going 7-3 on the season after starting 1-5. That's a true testament that this Denver Broncos team is heading in the right direction under Sean Payton, and the Broncos fan base, I feel like, will have a really good taste in their mouth heading into the final game. I know I certainly will be. So that's really how I think things are going to shake out for the Denver Broncos. All right, Broncos country, be sure to leave a like on this stream as well as subscribe and ring the bell so these videos and live streams appear in your notification feed. I would really appreciate it, guys. Those are 2 free and easy ways to show your support, helps tell YouTube's algorithm to push us out, and helps us get seen by more and more members of Broncos country just like you and me. We will see you guys live in just about 20 minutes, and until next time, guys, I am your host, Gage Madrid.